and welcome back. My name is Venus Green, and today we are going to get into the details of the new moon in Gemini, 24 degrees, and that's happening on June 14th, 2026. That's a Sunday where I live. You might have to adjust that time for wherever your location is. Okay, before we get into the details of the new moon, though, I want to go through just kind of what else is happening in the chart, just to quickly look at the major aspects there, because those are shaping lots of things right around that new moon, right? It helps to explain why the lunation is going to feel so transitional on the collective level. So the dominant influence here is really that Uranus in Gemini that's making the square to the nodal axis, Pisces, Virgo. This again is called the bending of the nodes. Now, this aspect often coincides with periods of instability, redirection, and very rapid changing momentum, right? So on the collective level, it's going to feel as though the future is arriving at a much faster pace than the existing systems are actually prepared to handle. And then, of course, we have the new moon itself happening in Gemini at 24 degrees. Now, Gemini increases movement, communication, mental activity, and it also increases the speed at which the information travels. So this really creates this highly reactive and fast-moving atmosphere that surrounds the whole new moon. Again, let's remember that the new moon always has a 3-day window, right? Well, Mercury is also in Gemini, so it's interacting with Jupiter, which is in Cancer. So that's adding some emotional amplification to the communications, but also the public discourse. Conversations are very likely to become more emotionally charged. There are going to be interpretations that become more subjective. There's also public reaction that is really probably going to escalate pretty quickly under this new moon. And then we have the one sort of attempt to stabilize here with Mars in Taurus. It'll be making a sextile to Mercury, right? And it's just trying to introduce some sort of practical stabilization into the chart, in my opinion. Now, there's so much mental activity unfolding, though, that there's still an opportunity for some grounded thinking, some productive dialogue, and some strategic decision making if we sort of lean into that Mars sextile there. And then, of course, we also have Uranus making a sextile to Venus. And that would bring in themes of changing relationship dynamics, but also shifting values, probably some sort of creative breakthroughs for some of us. And then, of course, a strong desire for authenticity or just personal freedom, because that's ultimately what Uranus wants. So if we take a look at all of those things together, the atmosphere does feel really mentally accelerated. It's going to be emotionally reactive, and there's it's just increasingly difficult to predict, right? Because that is also the nature of Uranus, right? Shocks and surprises. All right, so for the new moon specifically, Gemini, again, 24 degrees on the 14th of June, it's going to feel like one of the more mentally overstimulated periods of the year, and also it's an unstable period, right? We've entered into this shock and surprise, and we haven't really been here for quite some time. And by mid-June, though, many people are going to begin to notice how quickly the conversations, the public reactions, the narrative, all of those things are shifting, right? They're shifting in attention. And plans are going to start to change very rapidly under this kind of energy. Also, opinions are going to fluctuate quite a bit, right? The information just spreads faster than people can fully process emotionally. Now, with Uranus newly into Gemini, the pace is going to be even more unpredictable, because Uranus is making that square again to the nodal axis, right? So historically, these periods, they tend to coincide with redirection points on the collective level. So momentum changes, assumptions are going to weaken. And situations that generally would have appeared stable or we thought were stable, they likely can suddenly move in a very different direction. Now, because Uranus is involved, developments often emerge very abruptly and generally through circumstances that people didn't fully anticipate. So in Gemini, those disruptions are going to move through communication systems, through the media, technology, our transportation. It's just the very fast spread of information itself. Of course, on the collective level, people are going to feel like they're trying to orient themselves, right? But the storyline just keeps evolving underneath their feet, if you will. And honestly, I think that people are going to feel this one, especially on the mental level, right? The nervous system can become very overstimulated under Gemini heavy skies, especially when information cycles become really emotionally reactive. And that is what I'm anticipating, right? It starts to be difficult to stabilize or plant your feet firmly on the ground. Attention is going to fragment really easily under this kind of lunation. And then people are also just going to be attempting to absorb way too much all at once, right? It's constant updates, it's constant opinions, it's all of these interpretations. It's very reactive commentary, and that can create this sense of psychological exhaustion that happens very quickly. At the same time, Mercury's in Gemini, and it's trying to make an aspect to Jupiter here in Cancer, right? It's trying to add some emotional intensity to the communication and the public conversations that are going on. Well, under Cancer, people process information emotionally before they actually process it rationally. So themes involving things like safety, protection, family, belonging, emotional security, even some identity issues, right? These are going to start to become much more influential in how situations are interpreted. So while that energy can feel like it's absolutely increasing the emotional rhetoric, it's also very exaggerated, right? It's exaggerated reactions and can also bring up some important conversations that need to be brought out into the open, right? People often reveal what they genuinely feel underneath the surface under transits like this. Mars in Taurus is making a sextile back to Mercury. That does help to stabilize a part of the chart, right? There's still this ability for us to think practically, for us to respond productively, even while all of the external environment feels like it's very mentally overstimulating. Conversations are still going to be moving very quickly, right? But Taurus is trying to slow things down just enough to help people problem solve, right? Rather than just completely spiral. And then the Uranus-Venus sextile is going to introduce another, of course, layer, and that's a different one entirely. Now, the larger systems do feel really unstable. Many people may simultaneously be trying to find their authenticity, right? Within their relationships, with their creativity, with their personal values. But it's unexpected connections. It's probably through changing some of your social dynamics, but it could also just be some sudden attractions, right? And those breakthroughs can emerge very quickly under this kind of an influence. And that's the part that makes the new moon really feel so transitional. Now, something is shifting collectively beneath the surface now. It's not necessarily through one singular event, right? But it's through all of this acceleration itself. The pace is just going to change quickly and it's going to increase. So that mental environment becomes really hard to predict. Many people are going to realize that old explanations, they're not going to describe any longer the reality that they're moving through. Gemini teaches us about observation, right? It teaches us adaptability. It also asks us to stay mentally flexible enough to recognize when the story is changing, because Uranus reminds us that evolution rarely is going to arrive in any sort of, nice package or quiet time, right? This new moon is going to mark one of those moments where the future begins to rewrite the narrative much faster than everyone has expected, right? And the challenge now is going to become learning how you remain mentally open without becoming psychologically consumed by just the speed or the pace of change itself. Okay, let's go through quickly by rising sign. For Aries Rising, Gemini is your third house. So this new moon is going to place some strong emphasis on communication, decision making. It's also about planning and the way that you mentally process everything that's happening around. Really, really noisy, right? Conversations are going to increase, schedules will become busier, plans are going to require adjustment, and most likely more than once. Now, with Uranus newly into Gemini, situations can evolve much faster than you expected. So you might find yourself revisiting decisions. That's very likely. You probably will be changing directions mentally. You could just be realizing that certain assumptions that you were working under are no longer reliable as you try to move forward. Now, because Uranus is making that square to the nodal axis during this new moon, there's this larger sense that your future direction may be gradually shifting underneath many of those smaller day-to-day developments that are happening. Now, one of the more important lessons of this new moon is learning how to stay mentally adaptable, right? Without becoming emotionally reactive to every new piece of information that's coming at you. Not everything requires an immediate answer. Sometimes it doesn't require an answer at all. A part of this transit involves learning when to respond and when to just simply observe. Mercury is interacting with Jupiter, right? And this places additional attention on the home, family matters, also emotional activity, and your internal foundation. That's something that you control. Well, conversations involve things like living situations. They'll be about your family dynamics. It could be some of your private concerns, but also some long-term stability, right? All of those things are going to become more significant now. You might also find yourself thinking more seriously about what it is that genuinely feels sustainable emotionally for you. Mars is moving through your second house, and that does help stabilize part of the chart financially and on a practical level. Even while life feels really mentally fast moving, there is still going to be an opportunity to make some grounded decisions involving things like your money, your resources, your budgeting, or maybe just your long-term priorities. Now, with the sextile between Uranus and Venus, that's going to bring some kind of refreshing developments involving maybe dating, maybe friendship, maybe it's with your children if you have them. Could just be creativity, right? But it's a personal self-expression here. Now, for some Aries risings, there can be some unexpected connections maybe, right? Some new creative inspirations, and those things could emerge quite suddenly under this kind of an influence. So you might be keeping your eye out for that. Overall, though, this new moon is going to feel really like a mental recalibration for you, right? It's the way you think, it's the way you communicate, how you plan, it's how you orient yourself toward the future, right? And how that may be evolving very quickly. And while the pace is going to feel really difficult to stabilize initially, this lunation is also helping you to adapt to a reality that may no longer operate according to those old expectations that you had. Good luck to you, Aries. For Taurus rising, this new moon is going to be activating your second house. So the moon is then going to be placing this emphasis on the themes of finance, stability, personal priorities, but also your overall relationship with security as you move forward. And for many Taurus risings, June is going to bring some growing awareness around what is and what is not sustainable for the long term. And questions are likely to be around income, spending, resources. Could be your personal values, but also your self-worth. Those things are going to become much more prominent now. Uranus newly in Gemini here, the situation is probably going to feel way less predictable than you prefer. That might look like unexpected expenses. It could be changing financial priorities. There could also be some new opportunities coming up as well. But most likely, there are going to be some shifting conversations that are surrounding the topics of stability, and those can emerge rather quickly under this new moon. Now, for some Taurus risings, it might also reflect this deeper realization that the way that you've traditionally created security, that doesn't align anymore with where your life is heading. And because Uranus is making this square to the nodes during the new moon, then your future direction is also likely to feel very tied to these realizations that are coming through for you. Long-term goals, friendships, community connections, or even just certain social dynamics, those might gradually begin to reorganize, right? As your priorities are likely shifting internally or changing a bit. One of the more important lessons here involves redefining what stability actually means to you now. And as humans, we are just always evolving, right? As a Taurus, you very much like for things to stay the same, but this is a time where change is going to likely be required, right? We're not simply maintaining what it is that feels familiar anymore, but we're trying to recognize where growth is going to require some greater flexibility than you are generally accustomed to. Taurus naturally seeks out consistency, right? But this new moon is probably going to reveal where adaptation becomes necessary for your future growth. Now, Mercury is making an interaction here with Jupiter, and that places some additional emphasis on communications, learning, scheduling, and just your day-to-day responsibilities. Conversations are probably going to increase quickly under this influence, right? It's going to feel like a lot of important news coming at you, agreements about certain things that you've been waiting on, maybe some writing projects will be popping up, right? Transportation matters are also going to be coming up. Maybe just some discussions involving either siblings or your immediate responsibilities. Those are going to become more active throughout the month of June. At times, the pace is probably going to feel very mentally overwhelming for you, right? Many obligations are competing for your attention all at once. Mars, though, is moving through your first house. So that does increase motivation, determination, and just your overall desire to take action independently. You might very well feel compelled to move forward decisively or make some sort of practical choice that better supports your long-term well-being overall. Of course, at the same time, Mars in the first can also increase our impatience, right? If situations outside your control really start to slow your progress down, that's probably going to annoy you. And we also have Uranus making that sextile to Venus. So that is going to bring some unexpected developments for you involving things like home, family, your living situations, also your emotional foundations. Some Taurus risings, this could actually reflect the changing family dynamics that are already going on, right? But for some of you, there's a desire just to create more freedom within the home environment, or maybe some sudden realization will be coming through about what emotionally feels very supportive to you right now. Overall, this new moon, it does feel like a recalibration of your priorities, your relationship with security, finances, your own self-worth, but also long-term stability is likely to be undergoing some very important adjustments now. And while some of those realizations may initially feel very uncomfortable, and they likely will, the moon is really trying to help you build a future that reflects who you're becoming rather than who you were once just needed to be, right? Good luck to you, Taurus. For Gemini Rising, this new moon is happening in your first house, so it's likely to feel deeply personal to you. A new moon in your first house often marks the beginning of a new chapter involving one or several topics, right? It could be your identity, could be your overall direction, maybe it's your mindset or your personal shifts will be unfolding at a faster pace than you expected. You might feel increasingly aware that your life is entering some unfamiliar territory around this time, right? Certain roles or perspectives, maybe goals that you had. Maybe it's just a way of defining yourself that doesn't really feel as comfortable as it once did. At times that can feel really exciting, but at other times it might feel really difficult to just stabilize fully because there's so much that's actively reorganizing beneath the surface for you. Uranus is also squaring the nodal axis during this time, same time as the new moon here. So there's this larger sense that your personal growth is directly connected to the changes that are unfolding, maybe in your career path. If you don't have a career, it could just be long-term direction. It could be your public identity, but it could also be your emotional foundations. For many Gemini risings, the new moon is going to initiate a much larger process of self-redefinition, right? And that's going to continue to unfold over the next several years. One of the more important lessons here involves allowing yourself to grow without pressuring yourself to immediately understand exactly who you're becoming. Gemini naturally seeks out clarity, right? It does that through observation, discussions, and mental processing. But under this new moon, life might be asking you to just tolerate some uncertainty, right? For a little while, long enough for this new sense of self to gradually take shape. Well, Mercury's interacting with Jupiter, and that places some additional emphasis on the topics of finance and self-worth and personal resources, overall long-term stability. So you're probably going to be having some conversations around things like money and income. Could be about your possessions, your budgeting. Maybe it's just your personal values, right? Those are all going to become much more significant around this time. And then, of course, at the same time, Jupiter can amplify both the optimism, but also the excess, right? That's what he expands. It doesn't matter what it is. So this moon it might require some balance between emotional spending and maybe some practical long-term planning that you're trying to undertake. Now, Mars is going to be moving through the 12th house for you. So this can increase internal restlessness. It could bring about exhaustion. Might have frustration, a lot of frustration popping up for you, right? There's just this feeling that much more is actually happening emotionally beneath the surface than other people are able to recognize. Now, for some Gemini risings, there is some hidden stress, right? There's some burnout happening. There's some unresolved anger that you need to take care of, right? There's emotional fatigue, and those things are going to become much harder to ignore under this kind of an influence, right? It's time for you to take some rest. Maybe you need some solitude, right? There could be some spiritual grounding that's needed. The nervous system is it's trying to regulate, right? But it's just really hard for it to do that right now, right? It's especially important for you to take the time to rest if you feel like that's what you need. Now, we also have Uranus making that sextile to Venus, and that can bring about some unexpected conversations, right? Could bring about some creative inspiration as well, but maybe some sudden opportunities, maybe with networking or within your social circles, that could be refreshing a little bit. Maybe you have an opportunity to write. Maybe you are trying to learn something new, right? Maybe you're trying to get into some new online spaces overall, social media, if you will. But overall, what this new moon feels like is a personal recalibration for you. Your identity, your priorities, and really understanding yourself, all of that is undergoing a rapid adjustment right now. And while the process is going to feel really difficult to define clearly, right, in any kind of moment or maybe share with others, right, what you're trying to do right now, what this moon wants you to do is just help yourself step forward into a future that is going to require a very different version of you, right? One that definitely didn't exist, just a few years ago. Good luck to you, Gemini. For Cancer rising, this new moon is happening. Much of what you're processing under this new moon appears to be happening beneath the surface. Well, for For many Cancer risings, this might feel like a period of withdrawal. You might need some time for reflection. There could be some emotional processing happening, right? But it's private reorganization that's going on. Or you might become more aware of some underlying emotional dynamics. You might be more sensitive to overstimulation. You could simply just be exhausted, right? Just by the constant external noise that's happening around you. Now, with Uranus newly into Gemini now, some of what's surfacing is likely to feel really difficult and not really something that you can define or kind of stabilize in the moment. Unexpected realizations are going to be happening, right? Some disrupted routines. You're going to have some unusual dreams. You could be changing your perspective on certain things, right? There's this intuitive insight that's trying to emerge very suddenly during this new moon. Now, at times, though, your inner world is likely to feel really difficult, right? It's difficult to fully make sense of as all of these sort of deeper shifts continue unfolding underneath the surface for you. And that's because Uranus is also squaring the nodal axis at the same time. So there's this larger sense that your worldview, your long-term direction, it could be your belief system, it could just be your understanding of your own path, right? Those are going to be gradually changing and maybe taking on a new form. For some Cancer risings, this period is likely to feel like a preparation for a much larger transition, right? One that's not really fully revealed itself completely yet. It needs some time before it comes out externally. Now, one of the more important lessons of this new moon is going to involve learning when to step back from overstimulation and to allow yourself some space to decompress. That's really important. Gemini energy can really become mentally noisy. It can do that very quickly also, especially when it's activating the 12th house. Not every conversation, every headline, every opinion, right? All of these external distractions, they don't all deserve your energy right in the moment. And sometimes they don't deserve it at all, right? You can just hear something and you don't have to act or react to it at all with words. Now, Mercury is activating Jupiter also, and this is going to be placing a strong emphasis really on your identity, your emotional expression, maybe your physical vitality, right? It's this overall relationship with yourself really that you're working on. So you might feel emotionally amplified during this new moon, right? Your thoughts are going to become bigger. Your feelings might be a lot louder. And really, Jupiter is trying to move through your first house, and that might be causing some sort of desire for growth, maybe to reconnect with yourself in a more honest way, right? You might be trying to approach life from a new perspective, but also a more authentic emotional space. Mars is moving through your 11th house. So this is going to increase activity around the topics of friendships, networking groups, all of your social circles, right? It's your long-term goals also, though, and your community involvement. So there could be times where this can create frustration, right? Within your social circles, right? There could be some tension that's involved around expectations and responsibilities. But you might also begin to notice which connections are genuinely supportive of your future growth and which ones just aren't. Now, Uranus is also making the sextile to Venus. So that could bring you some unexpected developments around finances, your self-worth, your possessions, or just your personal resources. This might reflect a sudden sort of financial opportunity for some of you. For some of you, there might be some changing priorities around income, right? There's a new realization maybe that's coming about in terms of what it is that you truly value as you move forward. So for you, this new moon is going to feel like it's just preparation. Something within you is just quietly starting to reorganize now before we probably have this larger external changes that are going to be seen by everyone else, right? They're not yet ready to materialize. And while much of the process is trying to feel your way through it, right? Things are just going to be unclear in the moment, right? This new moon is trying to help you realize the patterns that no longer support the direction that your life is moving toward. Good luck to you. For Leo rising, this new moon is going to be activating the 11th house. So that'll put the emphasis on friendships, your social dynamics, any networking, maybe some long-term goals. It could just be your relationship with the communities that are surrounding you. Now, some Leos might see this new moon bring about some growing awareness around where your life is heading, right? And who is generally aligned with the next chapters of your life, right? And how those things are starting to take shape. Now, under this new moon, there could be certain friendships or collaborations, maybe some areas of your social circles. Could just be your long-term aspirations, right? Some of those things are changing, and they might be changing more quickly than you expected them to. Uranus did just move into Gemini, so some of these developments are going to feel like they are unpredictable at first, but we do want to give it an opportunity to kind of let things unfold. So you might notice some shifting around within the group dynamics that you're involved in. It could be unexpected opportunities that come through your networking circles. It could be just rapid changing conversations around your future plans and what you intend to do, right? There also could be some sudden realizations about which environments are truly supportive of your future growth. For some Leo risings, this moon is also going to reveal that some goals or friendships or social roles, those things no longer reflect the person that you are becoming, right? So as we're shifting internally, we do expect to see changes externally. Now, because Uranus is also making this square to the nodal axis, many of those developments that appear are going to be connected to some deeper themes involving things like trust, emotional vulnerability, could be about shared resources. It could also be about intimacy, right? Or maybe just some psychological transformations that are happening for you. This new moon might quickly clarify for you which of the relationships genuinely support your future path and which ones just feel like they are draining your energy at every turn. Now, one of the more important lessons here involves becoming more intentional about where your attention, your time, and your emotional investment is going. Gemini energy can really scatter the focus, right? And it can do that very easily. So especially when there are multiple voices and opinions, tons of invitations, right? All of these external influences are really competing for your attention simultaneously. And you need to narrow down what deserves your attention, right? Not every opportunity, chance to collaborate or social connection really needs equal access to the energy that you have right now. Now, Mercury is interacting with Jupiter during this time, right? So that puts some additional emphasis on your inner world, your emotional processing, your subconscious patterns, but also the need for just rest and decompression, right? Everybody needs that. For some Leo risings, though, this might bring a period of withdrawal, and that's fine. It could be that you are experiencing some vivid dreams during this time, right? You might have some heightened intuition, right? Or some exaggerated emotional reflection, and that's okay, right? There's this realization that your nervous system really requires more time for recovery than it generally does. There might also be some insights developing privately for you, ones that you feel that you are ready to act on, right? And you want to bring those things out externally. Now, Mars is moving through your 10th house, so that does increase ambition and visibility, also the motivation that is surrounding things like career matters and your responsibilities or your long-term achievements. So this is a time when you are likely to feel more driven, right, to pursue those professional goals. You might be trying to assert yourself publicly in some way. You might also be just taking some practical action that involves your next career direction, right? At the same time, though, Mars in the 10th house can also increase our frustration with authority figures. It can also bring some professional pressure toward you, right? These are situations that feel like they're really limiting your independence, right? And that can be very frustrating. And then we also have Uranus making that sextile to Venus in your first house. And that might bring some refreshing personal developments to you, right? Maybe it's about your identity. Maybe you want to change your appearance. You could have some real creativity flowing through, right? Your confidence might be increasing. You could also just be wanting to express yourself, right? There's this feeling of sort of like liberation, right? Especially if you have recently outgrown some older versions of yourself, or maybe the social roles that you've been playing, right? Those things don't feel authentic anymore, and you're ready for a change. This new moon is going to feel very social and also very directionally transitional for you, right? So this could be around your friendships, your long-term aspirations. It could be that you have this understanding of really where you belong, and you may be undergoing some important recalibrations during this time so that you can bring those things forward. Now, some of the social dynamics, they might feel a little bit uncomfortable at first, right? Unstable, and that, I think that's to be expected, right? But what this new moon is really trying to help you align with is it's more people, right? More honest people, right? It's about a different environment, and it's about goals that really genuinely support your growth as you move forward. Good luck to you. For Virgo rising, this new moon is going to be happening in your 10th house. So all the 10th house themes, right? This is going to put some strong emphasis on career direction, your public visibility, your long-term goals, your reputation, right? You might be stepping into a completely new professional role altogether. It's probably going to feel like there are some turning points happening around this time, right, that involve what your career path forward looks like. So lots of conversations around career or leadership or responsibilities, maybe some sort of recognition that you are reaching for, right? There's future planning that's happening, and that stuff is going to start to accelerate pretty quickly under this timeline. Now, Uranus just moved into Gemini, so a lot of the developments that are happening are likely to feel like, you know, they're unpredictable, or you don't really know what to expect. And that could be around leadership dynamics. It could be about workplace expectations, right? Maybe it's professional responsibilities that start to shift a little bit faster than you anticipated. There are some unexpected opportunities, or maybe some sudden changes, right, that could happen under this lunation. And those could also be directly tied to your career direction. And they could also be coming out very quickly. Now, for some Virgo risings, this might bring a growing awareness that your professional life is evolving beyond what once felt realistic to you, right? Or maybe familiar or secure. But Uranus is making that square to the nodal axis at the same time here. So many of the developments are going to appear like they are closely connected to the changing relationships, maybe agreements that you've had in place, right? Maybe the collaborations that you are involved in, right? Maybe the people that you're choosing to align yourself with in the future look a little bit different. This could also be a period where you quickly start to clarify which relationships are genuinely supporting your long-term growth and which ones are not really heading in the same life direction as you. One of the more important lessons of this new moon, though, involves remaining adaptable professionally without being consumed by all of that external pressure or the urgency that's being placed on you, right? There's this constant sort of comparison that's happening. A Gemini can also become really mentally overstimulating and very quickly, right? Especially in the 10th house. So you've got competing priorities for sure. You might have some public demands. There could be some information overload, right? That just is creating pressure for you to constantly stay ahead of, or maybe immediately solve every little problem all at once. That's not necessary, right? Part of this transit really involves recognizing that clarity often develops gradually, and while the longer transitions are still unfolding, we just need to be patient with that. Now, Mercury is also making an aspect to Jupiter, and that's going to put some additional emphasis on your friendships, your networking, community involvement, any sort of long-term aspirations that you have. You might be having some very helpful conversations around those things. You might also have some influential connections coming in, right? There could just be this expanding social network, and that could just be becoming increasingly important to you right now to be involved in those things, right? But at the same time, Jupiter also sometimes will over expand our commitments here in the social realm, right? So you want to make sure that you are trying to balance as best you can, like what is needed between maybe the future planning, right? And what's just realistic capacity that I can handle right now. Now, Mars will be moving through your 9th house, so that's going to increase the motivation around travel and education, maybe teaching or publishing, right? It's could also be legal matters, right? Some of those things are expanding your perspective a little more broadly right now. This might also reflect some growing urgency for you to pursue a brand new experience, right? Maybe you want to speak more openly about your beliefs in some way. Maybe you have some continued learning that you want to be involved in. Maybe you are just moving beyond these limitations that have felt really restricted, or maybe have restricted your life in some way. Oh, Uranus is also making this sextile to Venus, and that's in your 12th house. So that's going to bring some unexpected emotional insights, right? You could have some spiritual breakthroughs, right? There could be some private but yet creative inspiration that's flowing through. It might be just a time for you to take some, time for healing during this time. But it's important here that realizations are moving through quietly, right? And they're unfolding behind the scenes. For some Virgo risings, this is going to feel like an important internal awakening that has not fully materialized just yet. And I think that's okay, right? Overall, the new moon feels professionally and directionally transitional for you. It's your relationship with your career, your ambitions, your long-term goals. All of those things are undergoing some kind of rapid adjustment right now. And while the pace of change is initially going to feel like it's difficult or uncomfortable, something that you're not really fully able to manage, the new moon is helping you to adapt to a future that is likely going to require a very different version of you professionally than the one that you had maybe expected to be the outcome, right? Good luck to you. For Libra Rising, this new moon is happening in your 9th house. So that's going to put the emphasis on belief systems, education, travel. It's just the way that you understand your place in the much larger world. Now, some Libra risings might feel mentally expansive, but there's also going to be this increasing destabilization, right? In terms of what it is you thought you understood about your future or your direction or just life itself. Now, Uranus is just newly moved into Gemini at this point. So certain ideas, opportunities, or perspectives, those things might begin to change, and they might do that far more quickly than you expect. You may feel drawn toward new areas of study, right? Maybe some unfamiliar philosophies. There just could be a different way of thinking overall. And a lot of the conversations that you're having are likely to challenge your existing assumptions. Now, at the same time, this moon really wants to reveal where your older beliefs or long-held expectations those sort of rigid philosophies that you hang on to, how those things don't really reflect the reality of where you're headed. Now, because Uranus is also making the square to the nodal axis, many of these developments are going to appear like they are closely connected to the changes that are involving probably your work, your health routines, stress management, right? It's all those daily responsibilities. And we're trying to find this balance between productivity and emotional well-being. For some Libra risings, this period may reveal how dramatically your day-to-day life influences your ability to pursue some personal growth, right? Or some long-term goals. You're trying to find a meaningful sense of direction. One of the more important lessons of this new moon is going to involve remaining intellectually open without becoming overwhelmed or overstimulated by all of the possibilities that seem to be happening simultaneously. Gemini energy in the ninth house can really scatter our focus too. And it can do that very quickly. So what you want to do is make sure that you feel mentally pulled toward maybe everything all at once right now, right? But make sure that you're taking the time to determine what genuinely deserves your long-term attention. Part of this transit involves allowing your perspective to evolve gradually, right? Rather than trying to force some sort of immediate certainty or narrative, right? Just let things unfold naturally, even if that's a little bit difficult. Mercury is interacting with Jupiter during this time, and that's going to put some additional emphasis on career matters and public visibility, your reputation, right? That's all coming up for you, but there are some important professional conversations happening, right? There could be some leadership opportunities coming up. You might be expanding your responsibilities so that you can become more prominent at this time. But at the same time, Jupiter can really amplify pressure surrounding things like achievements or public expectations. So balance might be needed between these external success expectations and what's emotionally sustainable for you. Mars is going to be moving through your 8th house, and that's going to increase the intensity around debts, shared finances, taxes, intimacy, trust. It's all of those deeper psychological sort of material things. For some Libra risings, this is going to bring an urgency around some financial obligations or maybe some emotionally charged situations, right? Those are going to require some greater honesty at this time. There might be some boundary setting. There might be opportunities to take a look at vulnerabilities as well, right? If there are some deeper tensions that remain unaddressed, this energy can really become emotionally draining, and it can do that very quickly. Uranus is also making this sextile over to Venus in your 11th house. So that could bring some unexpected friendships, maybe some networking opportunities, right? There could be some supportive social connections happening, right? There's also an opportunity to just refresh the developments that are involved in your long-term goal planning, right? What are you looking to do for the future? This can also feel a little bit socially liberating, right, for some Libras, because you might be introduced to people or opportunities that really will expand your sense of what feels possible as you want to move forward. So overall for Libra, I think this is going to feel really mentally expansive, but it's also going to be, taking a different approach directionally for you. Your worldview, your long-term aspirations, the understanding that you have about your future, that is all undergoing some important recalibration right now. So while some of these realizations are going to feel like they are destabilizing at first, right? The moon is here trying to help you move beyond those older limitations that you're holding on to, right? Want you to move toward this broader understanding of what your life might be asking from you next. Good luck to you, Libra. For Scorpio rising, this new moon is going to take place in your 8th house. So that puts the emphasis on the topics of shared resources, financial entanglements, also trust and intimacy. It's really like the deeper exchanges that are taking place within your relationships. Well, for lots of Scorpio risings, June is going to feel intense beneath the surface, right? Even if much of what's happening and shifting is not really immediately available externally yet. Uranus just moved into Gemini, so there are certain financial or relational dynamics that are going to begin to change for you, and they're going to do that far more quickly than you expect. There could also be some unexpected developments involving things like shared finances, debts, contracts, inheritances. It could just be some emotionally complicated relationship situations that are trying to emerge, and they're going to do that suddenly under this new moon. But of course, at the same time, right, this lunation is trying to expose where certain patterns involving trust, control, dependency, maybe even avoidance, how those things have become really difficult to ignore. Now, because Uranus is making that square to the nodal axis, many of the developments that are coming up, they're going to appear like they're closely connected to changing relationship dynamics, right? Could also be about fulfilling some sort of creative obligation, right? Dating or children. It's the balance between intimacy and personal freedom for you. Now, for some Scorpios, this period might reveal which of the connections that you have are actually capable of evolving with you, right? And which ones just don't, right? The patterns show that they're no longer sustainable for you. And one of the more important lessons of this new moon is learning how to remain emotionally honest without trying to control every uncertain outcome, right? You cannot put everything in a box. Gemini energy moving through the 8th house, it can increase the mental fixation very quickly, right? You might find yourself overanalyzing every situation. You might be replaying all kinds of old conversations. You're trying to anticipate future problems even, right? Mentally, you need to really just let things unfold and evolve. And I know that's difficult, but that's what's needed right now. Part of this transit really involves recognizing that not everything can be intellectually managed into some sort of emotional safety that you need. Now, Mercury is also making an aspect to Jupiter, right? So that's going to put some additional emphasis on belief systems, education, topics of travel, or maybe legal matters, right? You're trying to expand your perspective more broadly here. For some Scorpio risings, you're going to have some important conversations or just maybe some realizations that significantly alter the way that you understand your future, right? Or maybe it's your purpose or your direction in life. Those things are moving forward in a different direction. There also may be some increasing desire to pursue growth beyond this just familiar psychological or emotional limitations that you have allowed. When Mars is moving through your 7th house here, it is going to increase activity and urgency, also tension within your relationships, your close partnerships, right? Any of the agreements that you have one-on-one with another person, those interpersonal dynamics are changing. Now, at times, though, it can also create some conflict. There can be some impatience. There's probably some competitiveness going on here, right? There's frustration within your close relationships. And even if those things are unresolved tensions, they are going to be building up to the surface, right? It's going to be quiet for some time, but there is this energy that's going to push those necessary conversations and those long avoided changes forward, right? It's going to move in a different direction than it did before. And then Uranus is making that sextile to Venus, and that's in your 10th house. So that's going to probably bring some refreshing developments involving your career direction or some leadership opportunities, right? It's your professional relationships here that are in the spotlight. For some Scorpio risings, this might reflect some unexpected career opportunities. It might be that you have a growing desire to just pursue work that feels more authentic and personally meaningful to you. But overall, this new moon really feels emotionally and psychologically transformative for you. I know that's a big word, but your relationship with trust, vulnerability, and intimacy, all of your shared resources, all of those things are undergoing an important recalibration right now. Some of those developments are going to feel really destabilizing at first, right? But the moon is trying to help expose what it is that can no longer remain hidden beneath the surface and needs to be brought up so that you can move life forward in a different direction. Good luck to you. For Sagittarius Rising, this new moon is happening in your 7th house. So that's going to put the emphasis on relationships, partnerships, agreements. It's the way overall that you relate to other people more broadly. For some Sagittarius risings, this might bring some growing awareness surrounding the stability or the direction, maybe just the overall condition of certain relationships in your life. Well, since Uranus just newly moved into Gemini here, it's some of the interpersonal dynamics might begin to shift for you around this time, right? Conversations might take some unexpected turns. Dynamics that probably felt very predictable in these relationships now are going to require much greater honesty and flexibility as you move forward. Uranus is also making the square to the nodal axis. And so many of these developments probably are going to appear like they're very closely connected to changing responsibilities around the home, family, maybe some emotional security, right? There could also be some career pressures, right? We're trying to find this balance between private life and your public obligations. Some Sagittarius risings during this period might have for them revealed very strongly your external responsibilities and how those things are influencing your closest relationships or vice versa. Some of the more important lessons during this moon involves remaining open to growth within those relationships without trying to force some kind of certainty, right? About where everything is going or in what direction are we headed immediately. During this new moon, conversations, they might multiply really quickly, right? But the clarity is not always going to arrive at the same level of speed. So just remember that. There's mixed signals. There are changing perspectives. Maybe even some difficulty determining where people genuinely stand, and that can become really noticeable around this time. So part of the transit really involves allowing these relationships to reveal themselves gradually rather than trying to rush to define an outcome or, some sort of future too quickly. Well, Mercury is making this aspect to Jupiter, so that's going to put some emphasis on your shared finances, some emotional vulnerability. It could also be about trust and debt, right? Taxes, investments, a lot of things in here. But there is a deeper sort of psychological thing going on, right? For some of you, it's important that these conversations happen so that the emotional honesty can come out, right? We might be talking about some financial obligations. There might be some shared responsibilities that are going to feel increasingly significant right now. Now, there probably aren't clear boundaries, right? There could be some emotional intensity, and that could escalate very quickly under this kind of an influence. So be mindful of that. Well, Mars will be moving through your 6th house. So that's going to increase activities surrounding your work responsibilities, your health matters, all the scheduling that you do in and out of your day. It's about also your productivity, just anything in general that's a day-to-day obligation for you. And you might feel pressured to manage more tasks than usual, or you could also just be becoming increasingly frustrated with the insufficient systems that you're working with, right? Maybe it's workplace tensions. Maybe it's just physical exhaustion, right? If you're pushing yourself too hard, you're going to find out right now. Now, at the same time, this energy can also help us to become more disciplined and more proactive about improving our habits and those maybe getting rid of those things that don't really support your well-being any longer. And then we're also going to have this Uranus sextile to Venus, and that's in your 9th house. So that's going to bring some probably refreshing opportunities around the topics of travel, spirituality. It could be about just expanding your perspective, right, in some unexpected ways. This is also a time that can feel really mentally liberating, and it might introduce some brand new ideas to you, maybe some new experiences. There could be people that come about now that significantly broaden your understanding of what's possible as you move forward. So overall, this really feels highly relational. It's also very mental for you, right? Your relationships, it's your communication patterns, it's understanding of partnership dynamics and how those might be undergoing some really important recalibrations right now. So while some of those interactions are probably going to feel unpredictable, right? Because that's how they start off, right? They're going to be difficult to define, but really the moon is trying to help you develop more honest, flexible, and authentic ways of relating as you move forward. Good luck to you. For Capricorn Rising, this new moon is going to be activating your 6th house. So that's going to put the emphasis on work, routines, responsibilities. It's also about your health. It's about scheduling. It's the overall structure to your day-to-day life. June is probably going to be highlighting just how much energy is currently being consumed by obligations, problem solving, and they're going to do that more quickly than you had expected. That's going to look like schedule changes that happen abruptly. It's going to be responsibilities that increase unexpectedly. You could have some miscommunication, right? Changing of expectations. There could just be some reactive workplace dynamics that start to become more noticeable around this time. For some Capricorns, this moon is also going to reveal where certain systems or habits or routines are just no longer sustainable for the long term. Uranus is making this square to the nodal axis, and so some of the developments are going to appear like they're really closely connected to these changing perspectives. Communication habits could also be around contracts, right? Or maybe transportation matters, right? But it's the way that you mentally organize your life more broadly. Some Capricorns during this period might have for them revealed how strongly your mindset and your communication patterns affect your ability to manage your stress effectively. One of the more important lessons of this new moon is going to involve learning how to adapt without falling into some sort of chronic overfunctioning or nervous exhaustion. Gemini energy, as it moves through, as it's happening in your 6th house here, that can scatter your attention really quickly. Naturally, Gemini is your 6th house, right? So you are accustomed to that, but are you adapted to that, right? You might feel some pressure to multitask constantly. You might be trying to solve every little problem immediately, right? It's this attempt to stay very mentally ahead of the situation before it's had a chance to even develop. Now, at times that pace can become really draining if you're not allowing yourself enough recovery space in between those responsibilities, so be mindful of that. A part of this transit also involves recognizing that productivity and well-being cannot remain completely separate from one another, right? Mercury is making this aspect to Jupiter, and that's going to put some additional emphasis on relationships, agreements, your partnerships, any sort of interpersonal communications as well. So important conversations involving your relationship expectations, commitments, just emotional honesty in general. Those things can become increasingly significant around this time. Now, without that emotional balance happening, those very small interpersonal tensions are likely to escalate more quickly than usual and And that can lead to just frustration and exhaustion overall. Now, Mars is going to be moving through your fifth house. So that's going to increase the activities surrounding those fifth house topics. It's about your children if you have them. It's creativity, it's dating, it's personal passions and pleasure, right? It's also your self-expression. So this might bring some refreshing motivations that are centered around romance and creativity. At the same time, though, Mars in the fifth can also increase the emotional drama that's happening, right? The impatience. It can bring about this tension within any sort of dating or romantic dynamics. There could just be a situation involving your children that is frustrating, and that it's kind of continuing to build beneath the surface, if you will. Now, Uranus is making an aspect to Venus in your 8th house. So that's going to bring some unexpected developments around shared finances, emotional intimacy, also your investments. It's your deeper relationship bonds here. For some Capricorn risings, this might reflect some sudden financial opportunities, right? There could be some changing of emotional priorities in some way. It also could be just some important realization involving your vulnerabilities and your emotional interdependence. Overall, what this new moon is trying to bring out is, it just feels very mentally active, and it feels like it's very structured for you. Your relationship with work, health, and responsibilities, all of your routines, even your stress management, those things are going to be undergoing a little bit of recalibration right now. And while the pace of that change is initially going to feel very difficult to manage, the moon is really helping you to develop some systems or habits that are going to better support your long-term goals or your overall well-being as you move forward. Good luck to you, Capricorn. For Aquarius rising, this new moon is going to be activating your 5th house. So that puts the emphasis on the topics of self-expression, dating, pleasure, children if you have them. It's the parts of your life that allow you to feel emotionally alive and really connected to yourself. For some Aquarius risings, June might bring about some growing awareness around what genuinely inspires you, right? And what no longer feels like it's emotionally fulfilling in the same way that it once did. Uranus is newly moved into Gemini now, so there are certain creative pursuits or maybe romantic situations or just personal desires that are going to begin to unfold. They're going to do that, though, more quickly than you expect. This looks like unexpected attractions. It looks like some sort of creative breakthrough. It could be a surprise opportunity, right? There's some realizations involving your personal happiness that are going to emerge, and they're going to do that very suddenly under this new moon. For some Aquarius risings, this new moon might also reveal where you have outgrown some older forms of self-expression, right? This creative identity, maybe. There might also be some relationship dynamics that just don't reflect anymore who you are at this point in your life. Well, Uranus is also making this square to the nodal axis, and during this time, there might be many developments that appear like they're really closely connected to maybe changing financial priorities. It could be about your self-worth, right? It could be some personal stability that you're struggling with. It could also just be about your resources, but it's your overall relationship with security as you move forward. That's what we're taking a look at. And then for some Aquarius risings, this period might also reveal how strongly your sense of fulfillment is actually connected to the way that you value yourself and the way that you structure your life practically. Well, one of the more important lessons of this new moon is going to involve allowing yourself this greater freedom to explore what it is that genuinely brings you joy without some sort of immediate over-analysis, right, of where is all of this heading. That's not exactly the point right now. Your attention might move rapidly between things like inspiration and excitement, distraction and restlessness, right? It's all of those things. However, too much mental stimulation might make it really difficult for you to try to stay fully present with your own feelings. And I think that's also important right now too, right? Creative inconsistency, fluctuations around your motivation could be happening. You could just be confused about the current dating dynamics that you're involved with, right? All of those things are going to start to become more noticeable. Part of this transit is going to involve reconnecting with spontaneity, right? And curiosity. It's the forms of self-expression that really feel mentally engaging without trying to become emotionally draining. Now, Mercury is also making an aspect to Jupiter, and so that's going to put some emphasis on your work responsibilities, your health matters, your routines, your scheduling. Overall, it's your well-being. For some Aquarius risings, it looks like the daily responsibilities might increase quickly under this influence, right? You could be having lots of conversations surrounding your work and responsibilities. Maybe it's with your coworkers. It could be about your health routines or your obligations. It's a lifestyle adjustment here that might be coming increasingly significant into the forefront. Now, at the same time, Jupiter can also magnify our stress here, right? Through things like overcommitment, making time for having balance between productivity and recovery is really important, especially during this period. Now, Mars is going to move through your fourth house, so that will increase the activity surrounding your home and your family matters. It's also about your emotional foundations and your living situations, right? There are some unresolved private tensions that might be bubbling up around this time. Now, there also may be opportunity to increase the impatience within the family dynamics too, right? There's going to be some frustration involving the household responsibilities and the emotional pressures that are beneath the surface related to that. So for some Aquarius risings, this energy might also motivate you to make some changes involving your living environment or your personal foundation. And then we also can't forget that Uranus is making this aspect to Venus, and that is in your seventh house. So that might bring some refreshing and unexpected developments involving your partnerships, your relationships. It's all of those close personal interactions that you have. It also could reflect some unexpected connections, right? Maybe there's some exciting new social opportunities that you have. Maybe there's some change in your relationship patterns. There could also just be this growing desire for having more honesty and authenticity within those close personal relationships that you already have. So for you, Aquarius, this new moon is going to feel like it's really creative, but it's also emotionally transitional, right? Your relationship with joy, creativity, and self-expression, all of those things are going to be undergoing an important recalibration right now. So while there is some developments that maybe feel a little bit unpredictable or difficult to stabilize initially, this new moon is really trying to help you reconnect with parts of yourself that may have been neglected or maybe just beneath the surface, right? The weight of those responsibilities or that emotional exhaustion is trying to come out. Good luck to you. And for Pisces rising, for Pisces, this new moon is happening in your fourth house. So that's going to put the emphasis on home, family, private life, your living situations. Really, it's your overall sense of inner security. June might bring some growing awareness around what it is that genuinely feels supportive and sustainable and just emotionally safe. A changing of emotional dynamics, right? Or just realizations involving your personal foundation may emerge, and they might do that quite suddenly under this new moon. For some Pisces rising, the new moon might also reveal where old coping mechanisms maybe some family expectations, or just those inherited emotional habits really no longer support this person that you are trying to become. Uranus is making this square to the nodal axis. So many of these developments probably are going to feel like they're very closely connected to your identity and your relationships and your long-term direction, right? It's the balance between personal needs and external expectations that we're trying to capture here. This period also might feel very deeply transitional internally, right? It's as though both of your worlds, your private world and also your understanding of yourself, those things are generally gradually reorganizing, and they're doing it at the same time. So there is an important lesson here to learn from the moon, and it involves creating a stronger sense of stability internally rather than depending entirely on external circumstances to remain very predictable for you to feel that way. Now, the mindset might also feel very unusually active, right? And of course, that's beneath the surface and kind of emotionally for you. So that might look like memories resurfacing. It could be some conversations that linger on, right, mentally, right? Maybe you are revisiting those in your own head. There could be some emotional reactions that become very difficult to settle if there's too much external stimulation, right? And of course, we are going to have a great amount of that. If that feels like it's sort of entering into your private space, that's going to feel extremely uncomfortable for you. Now, sometimes this might create some restlessness, right? It could also be overwhelm, right? It could be just difficulty trying to fully relax, right? It could also be the feeling that your nervous system is never really able to completely power down. And that might be something that you want to work on during this time, especially if you're feeling that agitation. So part of this transit really involves protecting your inner environment in a more intentional way, but it's also recognizing how strongly your surroundings really affect your overall well-being. Well, Mercury is making this aspect to Jupiter. That is going to put some emphasis on your creativity, right? Dating, pleasure, children if you have them. But it's also about your self-expression and also your emotional fulfillment. So for some Pisces risings, this might bring some joyful moments for sure, right? There could be some romantic opportunities. There can be some creative inspiration. There could just be this desire to reconnect with parts of yourself that feel emotionally alive and expressive. Of course, without some balance, though, that excitement or that emotional idealization might escalate very quickly, and it can definitely do that under this type of an influence. So be mindful of that. Now, Mars is going to move through your third house, so that will definitely increase the activity around communications and scheduling and learning. Also, errands and transportation, siblings if you have them. This is day-to-day responsibilities here. Now, it might create some level of impatience in your conversations, so you might want to watch for that. There could be some mental frustration happening for you. There could be some very reactive communication. It's just this feeling that life is really moving faster than your nervous system is comfortably able to keep up with, right? So I definitely recommend, trying to take some time for important decisions, right? There might be some very productive conversations that are happening at this time. There could also just be some greater confidence in expressing yourself directly. And then, of course, we have this Uranus sextile to Venus that's happening in your sixth house. So this might bring some refreshing developments forward for sure, right? That involve your work, your health, your routines, your productivity. It could be with your coworkers, just overall your lifestyle habits. For some Pisces rising, this is going to feel like it could be reflecting some unexpected opportunities within your profession. Maybe there are some healthier routines that are trying to emerge. Could also be about just changing work environments in general, right? There's a realization about how your daily habits are affecting your emotional and your physical well-being. So Pisces, for you overall, this moon feels very deeply personal. It's also very deeply emotional. Your relationship with your home, your family patterns, your private life, all of that's undergoing some important recalibration right now. And while some of those developments are initially going to feel difficult, right? They're not going to, you're not going to have ease with stabilizing those fully. The new moon here really is trying to help you create this stronger internal foundation so that better supports the direction that you're trying to move your life in, but gradually, right? Not all at once. Good luck to you, Pisces.